Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll start in about 4 minutes. I will talk so that everybody can get the sound right. Go ahead while we're waiting to go over to the chat and tell us, make sure you chat to everyone, and tell us where you're joining us from, and if you're watching with students, and how many you have watching with you, and what grade they are in. And any messages you want to send over to Matt while we wait. And just so everyone finds it, go ahead and find the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen, because that's where you'll put questions for Matt. You are welcome. If your class wrote your questions in advance, you are welcome to put your questions in there now. Or you can wait until we start. Please, when you put the questions in, tell me who the question is coming from. So the name of the student who wrote the question, or the name of the classroom that wrote the question. Matt, make sure you are chatting to everyone. I think I'm the only one that can see your messages right now. There we go. All right, welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, go ahead and tell us where you're coming from, and tell us how many students are watching with you, and what their ages are, what grade you're watching with. We'll get started in 2 minutes. So happy to see everyone joining us live today. At the end of this, 5 classrooms will get chosen to get a free copy of the book, and Mackin will coordinate that with you. So make sure that you were registered and you can get into that drawing. For those who just joined, just a note to say that we will use the Q&A button to add your questions for Matt. That button is on the bottom bar. Go ahead and find it now. If you wrote questions in advance with your students, you can go ahead and add them, and make sure you tell me the question, where the question's coming from a student, their name, or the whole class, if you wrote them together. All right, everyone, welcome. Just based on number of classrooms that I see here, I think we've got at least 1,000 students watching, which is awesome. Welcome, everyone. All right, it is 1 o'clock here in Minneapolis, so we will get started. We are so happy to welcome you to Mackin's Storyteller Spotlight. My name is Kaya Heisey. I'm here to ask Matt your questions. Our special thanks to Penguin Random House, Penguin Young Readers, who helped us make this event possible. We are so excited to have Matt with us today. Matt de la Peña is the New York Times best-selling Newbery Medal-winning author of 7 young adult novels, including Mexican White Boy, We Were Here, and Superman, Dawnbreaker, and 6 picture books, including Milo Imagines the World and Last Stop on Market Street. Matt studied creative writing at San Diego State University and went to University of the Pacific on a full basketball scholarship. Matt lives in Southern California and teaches creative writing and visits schools and colleges throughout the country. Welcome, Matt. I'm going to hand it over to Matt to show you his new picture book. And then when he's done, we'll go back to the Q&A and I'll remind everyone how we're doing that. But here we go. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you. And my favorite thing to do with students is answer questions. So I'm going to take very little time in showing my new book, but I did want to show you a couple things. So I'm going to share my screen and put it up here. Okay, so this is my brand new book, and it's called The Perfect Place. And this is an interesting story because this kid on the cover here, his name is Lucas, and he lives in a normal working class neighborhood. You know, some parts are not beautiful. There's a lot of people pushed together in a small space, but he has this opportunity to go to this very fancy private school because he's a good student. And his problem is that he's not sure if he fits in. He keeps thinking, I don't know if I really belong. I don't know if I could ever be one of them. So with that in mind, I'm going to just tell you one last thing. Every day when his mom or dad drives him to the new school, he feels like he has to almost become a different version of himself. So he becomes like a version that he thinks they will accept. So I'll leave it there and read you a couple pages. So here he is with his principal and some of his friends. On the day Lucas got a perfect score on his robot report, he floated through the halls with his head held high. And when he got his perfect score, he felt so proud of himself, and you can see that his friends are celebrating him. And this is a great moment. However, something on the next page doesn't go perfect for him. But that afternoon, his dad's old work truck stalled, pulling away from the school. Lucas had to hop out and help shoulder it through the busy intersection, car horns blaring, classmates staring, his polo shirt wrinkled and ruined. And so his dad is a landscaper. He mows people's lawns, helps some sick trees, or helps like with a flower bed. So he works in people's yards. Unfortunately, on this day, you can see his dad's truck has broken down. And the most important aspect of this page is his friends are watching Lucas have to get out and push the truck out of the intersection. So he feels like, well, now they truly know I don't belong here. The last thing I'm going to show you from the book before we get to the questions is I'm going to fast forward through the book a little bit, and I'm going to tell you something that happens that night. A light shines through his window, and Lucas decides to follow it, and it takes him out of his neighborhood to this strange Golden Gate area. And through this, across this threshold, this is where the perfect people live. And so I'm going to leave it there, but that's kind of what the book is exploring, is how do you fit in with a group of people that you don't feel like you belong to? So I'll stop sharing and let's get to the questions.
Okay, just as a reminder, we are going to use the Q&A part to ask Matt questions. I will disappear, but you will still hear my voice. If you put it in the chat, I'll still share everything you put in the chat with Matt, so he'll see everything, but put your questions in the Q&A and tell me what student asked that question. All right, here we go. First question for you, Matt, is Kimber from Mrs. Tidwell's class in Kentucky asked, how long does it take for you to write a book?
Okay, this is a good question, and I feel like I have to offer a trigger warning right now because it takes a long time. What takes the longest part of the process isn't writing the first draft of the book, but you all know when you read a story in school, sometimes a teacher will say, okay, I need you to edit it or do a revision. Here's the scary part about my career is that I have revised every book I've ever written at least 50 times. So if you have a teacher who asks you to do 3 drafts, consider yourself lucky because I always end up having to do 50. And one final note on that, what takes me so long is that I not only have to get the story right, I also have to get the music right. To write a great picture book, in my opinion, it has to become almost a song. So that's what takes me all the time. And to put a number on it, most books take me around 5 or 6 months if it's a picture book text. And then, of course, it takes the illustrator 5 or 6 months or even a little bit more. So every book takes longer than a year.
Mrs. Neal's fourth grade class asked, what made you become an author and how old were you when you wrote your first book?
Okay, great question. I have 2 answers for how old I was. The first one is, I don't think publishing a book makes you a writer. You know what makes you a writer? Writing. So I would say I really became a writer in high school when I started writing a lot of poems. My first book came out, I was in my late 20s. So yeah, that's how old I was. What made me want to be a writer? When I was your age, I was a very quiet kid and a very average kid, but I noticed a lot of things in my neighborhood, and I felt like some people weren't paying attention to things I thought were interesting. Well, here's the thing. If you write a book and you put in those things that you think are interesting and somebody reads them, they're going to see what you see. And that's my favorite thing about being an author.
Damien asked, did you like books as a kid?
What a good question, Damien. I wasn't a big reader when I was young. I think partially it's because of where I grew up. I grew up in a community where a lot of people didn't have books in their house. So I never owned my own books. We would go to the library sometimes. I had a great mother. She would take us to the library, and of course there were books at school, but I didn't have any in my house. So I discovered reading later. One of my favorite things as a dad is my kids are surrounded by books, and that's like thrilling to watch as a dad.
Cooper's wondering if you still play basketball.
Cooper, I have some sad news. I'm getting old. So I'm kind of slow now, and I don't play as much basketball. So I like to shoot around. I like to play with my 6-year-old and block his shot, but I don't play the way I used to.
Jesus is wondering, have you ever had writer's block and how do you handle it?
Jesus, that is a good question. So there are times I get stuck, but I have a theory about writer's block. I think it's a writer. It doesn't matter if it's a professional writer or a young student. I think it's a writer trying to look at the big picture of the story too soon. So what I try to do is narrow my vision into one tiny little thing that I want to accomplish in that moment, which is like get a character from the kitchen to the bedroom. So I try to look at my stories in little tiny, tiny sections. And then when I'm done, I can look at the big picture.
Prince is wondering, what is your least favorite part about being an author?
Ooh, I like that question. I think you have to have thick skin as any kind of artist. So here's the truth. Not everybody is going to like the stories you tell, or the paintings you paint, or the music you make. So I just think you have to understand that you can't please everybody. And you want to write things that you would read as a kid. So that's what I try to do. And I try to not worry about trying to please everyone. I just try to make something that I think is interesting.
Okay, I am going to screw this name up, but Deserter is wondering, where do your stories come from? Are they from personal experiences, or how do you come up with them?
Oh, I love this question because this gives me a chance to shout out some class that I saw on the chat. There is a class here from National City in San Diego. Hello, by the way. Well, that's where I went to my early years of elementary school, and I have pulled so many stories from that experience because that's where I started my life. And so that's a big part of my, so I guess you would say my authorial world. But I love real life. I'm so obsessed with real life and real people. I also love people who have regular jobs, like working class jobs, like in the book that I just shared with you a little bit, the dad's a landscaper. I have people in my family who have done that. The mom works at a diner all night. She works the night shift. My mom used to do that right before I was born. So I just love to celebrate people who are working regular jobs and living regular lives because I think their lives are beautiful.
Jude asked, what inspired you specifically to write The Perfect Place?
Okay, now this is going to be confusing to you. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college, and I felt so out of place when I got to college because I went to this beautiful school, private school, very small, and all the kids around me, they were pretty wealthy and they were driving nice cars, and I was there on a basketball scholarship. So I'm actually using that experience in order to write The Perfect Place. Um, so of course the main character is not in college. He's in elementary school like many of you. But I took that experience as sort of the inspiration. And then one other thing I'll share with you, part of the book was inspired, I guess the overall structure, by Where the Wild Things Are. In that story, Max starts off in this safe suburban neighborhood, and then he kind of like has this fantasy of going into this other world where it's kind of a little, the rules aren't so strict. And then he eventually retreats back to his safe environment. Well, I thought, what if my character starts in the place where it's a little bit more, there's more energy and there's some dirt and, uh, people are pushed together. And then he goes off and looks at the suburban world and then comes back to his world. So I wanted to kind of do the flip of that.
Uh, Kafan asks, what is your favorite book besides your own books?
Ooh, this is like my favorite question. So maybe I'll do three. These are great questions, by the way. My all-time favorite picture book in the universe is called Each Kindness by Jackie Woodson. I love that book. Another great picture book that I always kind of share when I'm talking about picture books in front of people is The Adventures of Beagle by Dan Santat. I love that story. And then if you're a little bit older, I would like to share a couple chapter books. One of them is called Inside Out and Back Again by Tang Ha Lai. And it's about a girl who goes from wartime Vietnam and lands in Alabama as a refugee. I think that book is beautiful. And then if you like graphic novels, I just love this one by Jean Yang. It's called American Born Chinese. Amazing story. And also, I would just like to say graphic novels today, the ones that are coming out, are stunning.
Lots of students, including Lena, asked, how many books have you written in total?
Another complicated question because I guess I've written more books than have come out into the world. So I think now I've written 23 books, but 20 are out. That means a couple of them haven't come out yet, and they're scheduled to come out. One of them is called Home, and it's illustrated by Lauren Long, the person who illustrated Love. That comes out in February. But then I have another one that I'm just finishing. It's my very first middle grade novel. It's got a lot of basketball in it, I'm sorry to say. Well, I'm not sorry to say, I love the game, but I'm so excited for that book, and I just finished it, and I'm about to turn it in. but I also have a book that wasn't good enough. I wrote it. I have to say I loved the book. It was 500 pages, but it didn't have a plot. And apparently that's not a good thing. So it ended up going nowhere. But even that book that wasn't good enough to get published, it wasn't a waste of my time, even though it took me a year and a half to write. There was a character in there that I really liked. His name was Shy. And I ended up taking him out of that book and putting him into some other books that ended up getting published, like The Living and the Hunted, which are YA novels. So even the books that are quote unquote, failures, they're not failures. You learn so much from books where you don't get it quite right. And you take that knowledge with you to your next books.
Mia wants to know what your parents think about your books.
What do my parents think about my books? I have very nice parents, I will tell you that. They're great people. I feel like I'm so lucky. I have a dad who's, he's got a Mexican background. My mom is white, and so I'm a mixed race person. And I love that I have access to both worlds. My mom didn't grow up with her family, so we really only had my dad's family, the Mexican family. And I learned so much from my family members, and most of them all lived in National City as well. Um, my dad always says this when I write a novel. He looks at me and he looks at the book and he looks at me again and says, "Is this another story about a bad dad?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sorry." Uh, but he's a good dad. But sometimes, you gotta talk about the bad stuff. But my mom, I will tell you this, she's like one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I feel like she's the reason I try hard at life.
Braxton is wondering, did you draw the pictures or did someone else?
Okay, Braxton, I have to admit something. I am literally the worst artist in the history of the world. One time I was at a bookstore and they said, we have this ritual where an artist or an author who comes to the store has to draw on the wall or put a line from their book. And I was looking at the wall and there were all these cool pictures by these amazing illustrators. And I felt like this isn't fair. Why don't authors get to draw? And they were like, you could draw. So I drew a horse and they told me it was the worst horse ever. And they said it looked like a dog. So I had to actually label it horse. So in other words, it would be a bad idea to have me do the pictures in the book. So I get to work with incredibly talented people like Lauren Long, Christian Robinson, Kadir Nelson, Karina Lucan. And on my new book, it's Paula Escobar. And I feel so lucky to work with these talented people.
Isabel is wondering what your kids' names are and how old are they?
Well, this is important information. Do you guys care if I share my screen to show you a picture of them? Is that okay?
Go for it.
I'm going to do it real fast, okay? So I will not only share my kids' names, I'll show you pictures. Okay, so this is my daughter Luna. When she was really little and I read to her for the first time. It looks like a nice moment between a father and a daughter, but she cried the whole time. Very sad. She's older now. She's in 4th grade. Her name is Luna. I also have a boy. He has massive cheeks. He looked like this when he was little, and now he's in kindergarten. So those are my kids. His name is Miguel.
Rosa is wondering if you were bullied as a kid.
That's a good question. I think everyone has an interaction with someone at some point in their lives that isn't positive, right? So I don't think I was consistently bullied ever. I went to school with a lot of kids that were my friends and supportive of each other. I also went to school with a lot of cousins. But I think the most important thing I could share here is that the things that you're going through today are only temporary, right? So you are going to move forward tomorrow. And so it's a good idea to just concentrate on the things that are happening that are positive. Hang out with the friends who are nice to you, because tomorrow you'll have a new group of friends and you'll have a new dynamic with your class. So You just try to get through the tough parts. And by the way, if you do get through them, they become your superpower because you've gotten through tough things. Kids who can get through tough things are superheroes.
Safa wants to know, what are some challenges that you encountered as you became an author?
I think it was believing in myself because when I was young, I used to think writers were like the smart people. They probably knew all the spelling words in elementary school. They got the best scores on the math test. But I was just such an average person. I didn't think maybe I was smart enough to write a book or exceptional enough to write a book. I also loved sports, and sometimes I learned, I guess, through listening to adults talk that it was hard to be good at sports and art, something creative. So I guess when I was starting out, I just didn't know if I was the kind of kid who was supposed to be writing books. But I guess I'm thrilled to say that average, ordinary kids can go on to do incredibly interesting things with their lives. So now my favorite thing to do is go to a school, look at them all and say, I was such an average kid. And my job now is I write books, and they've heard of some of these books. And so it's just, average people go on to do cool things. It doesn't have to be an author, obviously, but you could become a doctor or a principal or a teacher. So I love that I can share that with students.
Lots of students have asked if you speak Spanish and if your books are ever in Spanish.
Well, I have some good news and bad news. The good news is all my books, Penguin Young Readers, they're so amazing because they publish the Spanish version of all my books on the same day as the English version. So the day the English book comes out, the Spanish version comes out as well. So that is the good news. The bad news is I grew up in an era where a lot of parents were like my dad, who spoke Spanish, and they thought it was better to make sure we spoke English in the house, but also at school, because they thought we could assimilate. So a big word. We could assimilate into America. Now we know that that probably wasn't the best idea. Actually, we've found out that if you speak two languages, you have way more opportunities than other kids. So you are so lucky if you speak Spanish and English. My Spanish is not so good, even though I grew up around it. My dad's greatest regret is that he didn't make sure we spoke Spanish.
Sage asked, if you weren't a writer, what do you think you would be?
Good question. I think I would be a school counselor because I'm very interested in young people. I love young people. I just think being a dad is like my favorite thing I've ever done. Um, and I just want to make sure kids are okay, So I think I'd be a counselor. Here's my dream day on the job as a counselor. I'd take a little boy who was similar to me, and maybe he was the kind of kid who didn't want to talk about his problems. I think we'd go to the gym and we'd be shooting baskets, and it'd be quiet for 10 minutes. And then I could ask him questions as I'm shooting, and by the way, making all the shots while he's missing half of them. And I'd start to talk to him about his life. And I think he'd open up. So I think I would like to connect with young people and try to help them get through their struggles.
Sebastian is wondering if you have a cat or a dog.
Okay, I want to add on to the last one. I would be a musician. That would be so cool, right? My daughter makes me listen to all the Taylor Swift albums, and I now think she's a genius. So maybe I would be the male Taylor Swift. Okay, back to my animals. I do have a dog, but the dog is really a cat, if that makes sense. I don't know if anyone knows this breed of dogs. It's called a Shih Tzu, but it's a small dog. My my daughter loves this dog. My wife loves this dog. I'm lukewarm on the dog. Her name is Ramona. Sometimes I try to take her on a walk, and she only makes it down one block, and then she will not walk any further. She just lays down. And if you try to keep going, you will end up dragging her. So you have to pick her up and hold her while you're walking your dog. That doesn't make any sense. So Ramona is a dog, but she's really a cat.
Cheyenne wants to know what you like to do in your free time.
Well, right now, I have to tell you, I am on the road. And I got to tell you, have you guys ever gotten sick? I got sick on the road and I actually couldn't make my next stop. So I'm in a hotel room until tonight. And I had to get on antibiotics and stuff. So what I'm doing outside of writing right now is not fun because I'm trying to get healthy again. But when I'm healthy, I love to play guitar. I love to hang out with my kids. I love to watch NBA basketball. My favorite team is the Celtics. They play tonight, game 5 of the series against who are they playing? They're playing. Who are the Celtics playing right now? Come on, Matt. Oh, they're playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I like to watch them. What else do I like to do? I don't like to walk my dog. Let's see. I like to shoot baskets and stuff. I teach in college, and so I love to watch young writers, college age level, become better at their craft. And those are the people who are going to write the stories of tomorrow. So I like to help them.
Emily wants to know if any of your books have been made into movies, or if you want any of them to be made into movies.
Okay, I have some good news here. Well, it's past good news, but my first book was made into a movie and it's called Ball Don't Lie. It's about a basketball player growing up in Southern California. And it was such a cool process to watch this tiny little story that I wrote alone in a room become a movie with actors and stuff. And Ludacris was in it and Melissa Leo. And I was actually in it for 2 seconds as a referee. That was an amazing experience. But a couple of my picture books, actually 3 of them, have been turned into children's theater productions. So Last Up on Market Street, Carmela Full of Wishes, and now Milo Imagines the World. They are all now plays in children's theaters, and that's really cool to watch because they've become musicals, and it's just amazing to watch your little story become another form of art.
Ari wants to know, what was your favorite subject in school?
Well, when I was in high school, I loved psychology, and that kind of connects with that idea of being a counselor. But when I was really young, I guess I couldn't find my thing. It wasn't until I got into middle school that I became a better student, a stronger student. But my mom made one rule for me. She said, "You're going to go to school every day unless you're extremely sick." So I always showed up. And even though I didn't have that much confidence and I'd sit kind of in the back of the class and try not to get called on, it turns out that if you are there, that is a big percentage of the success rate. Is you just have to show up. So I guess I would say once I got into middle school, I started to find some books that I liked, and I liked my English classes. And in high school, I loved psychology.
Last question from Carter wants to know, what is the title of your next book?
Good question. I cannot believe 30 minutes went by that fast. I was trying to do it quick so you guys could all get your questions in. But if this is the last question, I feel sad already that we're going to have to say goodbye. But I will just tell you that my newest book, again, is with Lauren Long, and it's called Home, Home, and it comes out in February. And the basketball novel that I told you about, it does not have a title yet. I do not let myself title a book until it's finished.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for being here with us. Students, teachers, this is a great time to go over to the chat and tell Matt anything you want to tell him in this last minute we have together. I'll send all of your chat messages to him. So tell him anything, tell him thank you, tell him anything about you that you want to tell him. And then just for the teachers, let me let you know that, oh, sorry, wanted to show you next month's next month's Storyteller Spotlight is going to be with Grace Lynn on June 4th. And you can
Oh my
find,
gosh, Grace Lynn, you guys are so lucky.
I know it's going to be fun. And let me just show the screen. So there it is. All
Do you know
right,
what's
June.
sad? My daughter, she probably would never watch mine, but she would love to see the Grace Lynn one.
All right, we'll have her sign up, okay?
I'll ever sign up.
All right. Any last words for all the wonderful students that watched today, Matt?
Well, I'm just thrilled that we could hang out. Maybe one day I'll get to meet you in person, and thank you so much for jumping on this Zoom so we could spend a little time together.
You guys did really great with the questions. Excellent job.
And thank you, Mackin.
Of course. Bye, everybody.
Bye.